edit this begin and out. If you're watching this at home, go back and watch the video that we created yesterday, because we went through the first bit of the notes that I'm about to show you here in just a second already. So we already went through the organization of the nervous system and the histology, the everything but the nerve cells yesterday. So there's video on the Canvas site that covers that already. That's a little bit better quality than this video, but go back and check that out. And I apologize for this video being backwards. We're still trying to figure that out on the Zoom, but try to stick with me as much as you can. And if you can flip it on your video player, do so. So today we're going to talk about the neuron, the nerve cell. And so we have this picture right here, and definitely need to make a copy of your notes, because we're going to tell you what each of these numbers are, and this picture doesn't tell you what each of these numbers are. So we definitely need to make sure you make a copy so you can add that information in. And even if you just like print it off and draw things, or you can do it digitally, however you can do it, it's up to you. Do it however you want to. But definitely one of the things on your first test is going to be needing to label an image that looks very, very similar to this. So be able to tell me what that cell is. And if you remember back last week, we talked about the cell. And in biology class, you learned about that regular old cell. Very few cells in your body look like this. Cells are going to be very diverse and look all different kinds of ways. And nerve cells look really strange. One of the first things that you might notice about a nerve cell is that you got this long piece. Why do you think nerve cells have this long middle piece? What's the nerve cell's job? Yeah, to carry signals from one place to another. And so you have that long middle piece to carry that information on. All right, so let's break down the different parts. First off, you have the cell body. Cell body is number 2 here, aka the soma. So number 2 is the cell body, the soma, S-O-M-A. I'm completely cool with calling it the cell body. It's pretty much just the normal part of your cell. So you have your cell body, the normal part of your cell, which means if this is the normal part of the cell, guess what this darkened spot is? No. If this is a normal cell and this is a normal cell, what is that darkened spot? The nucleus. Yeah. So the nucleus is that dark part of the cell, that number 8 up there. Another thing that's not in this picture that I can maybe have you add a little bit is the other thing in your notes here, these ribosomes. Because when you see a nerve cell under a microscope, it's usually not just one. It's usually this labyrinthine tangle of a whole bunch of different nerve cells. And so it's hard to tell where one nerve cell stops and another one begins. And so sometimes it's hard to tell, is this the axon or is this the axon? And so the way to do that is to look for these ribosomes. They're called Nissl bodies. And so what you're going to have when you look at it under a microscope, hopefully I can draw. Let's see. You going to let me draw? Yeah. You're going to see these ribosomes, and we all know ribosomes are just little dots, and they're all kind of angled off of the nerve cell towards the axon, which we'll get to in a second. Okay? So Nissl bodies are these little dots. Just a special name for the ribosomes of nerve cells. N-I-S-S-L bodies. Oh, it's going to stay there. I'll have to erase it. Okay, so we have the nucleus, we have the ribosomes, which are the Nissl bodies there inside the cell body. Then number 1 here is your dendrites. These are your dendrites. This is the sensory part of the cell. This is the part of the cell that's going to be receiving information. So if you had another nerve cell that's talking to this nerve cell, it would be giving the signal right there at the dendrite. Dendrites are what's going to be sensing, what's going to be starting the information. So the information gets here, gets processed by the cell body, and then you're going to send the signal. You're going to send the signal down this long, skinny thing here, and number 3 is trying to show it, but that's the one thing I don't really like about this picture. I wish this 3 line actually went this whole way and covered this whole area. So if you want to change that on your paper, you can. Because if I drew this, instead of drawing it like that, I would draw it like that. That whole part is the axon. The axon, A-X-O-N, is going to be carrying the information across the distance. Now, what's interesting is that axons can be very, very, very long. Sometimes axons are really short, like sensory axons. Sensory nerves are in your skin. They get the information, the dendrite gets it, and then you have a little tiny axon that's going to go to another nerve. But you have cell bodies in your brainstem, which is this little pink guy on the bottom of your brain. You have this thickened part called the pons of your brainstem. You have cell bodies in here that have axons that run down your entire spinal cord. And then they'll start another cell in the dorsal root ganglia of the spine. And so you can actually have individual nerve cells that are, 2-3 feet long, that are just one axon flying all the way down your spinal cord. Now, most of them aren't going to be that long. Most of nerve cells are going to be, at most 1 or 2 inches. But some axons can be very, very, very long and go across a whole lot of distance. Now, we're going to talk in a second about how this signal goes down the axon. But what you want to think about is that it's an electrical signal. Now, what do we normally think about carrying electrical signals? What type of material? Now, obviously, I'm holding rubber in my hand, but it's rubber in my hand. Why? It's an insulator so that when I pick this up, when it's plugged in, I don't get shocked. So underneath this rubber insulator, what's there? What material? Wires, copper, made of, big picture, metal. Because metal, if you remember back in chemistry, electrons are free. Electrons can go wherever they want to go, so it's really, really good at transmitting electricity. Now, your nerve cells are electrical signals, but they're not made out of metal. Yes, ma'am? Do you have any headphones? Oof. And you can talk to your Fortnite friends on that too.
Is the microphone like a good enough on there? Because actually you don't have that.
As long as you don't plug it in. It's got a plug for the headphones and a plug for the mic. Okay. Sorry about that. That's Lauren interrupting my video.
You want to know what?
I'm just thinking. All right. So are your nerves made out of metal? No. So we have to send an electrical signal, but we don't have metal to use. And that's good that our nerves aren't made out of metal. Because if your nerves weren't made out of metal, it would be really hard to turn the signal on and off. Because you don't have switches, like we talked about last week, in your nerves. You kind of do, but you don't have these straight up on-off switches. You want to be able to control those nerve signals much, much more delicately. And most of the time, we want the nerves not to be sending a signal. If they were made out of metal, most of the time they'd be sending signals and it'd be hard to stop it. And so these are made out of organic material. These phospholipid bilayers, like remember the cell membrane, the phospholipid bilayers. Anybody remember this from biology class? The cell membrane kind of being shaped like that. You get that phospholipid bilayer, the hydrophilic heads and the hydrophobic tails of lipids. Okay, that's how your axon is shaped. Your axon is the same thing as your cell membrane. So it's organic material, but we want to shoot electricity through it. So the easiest way that it does it is it changes what elements can go across the cell membrane. So to carry an action potential down, and we'll go in this way more in just a second, every little spot along the axon has to change ions, has to let certain ions in and pump certain ions out. we're talking the size of atoms. Atoms are really, really small. If you have to pump the size of atoms going down this path, what can you tell me about your nerve signal? If a nerve signal had to go atom by atom by atom by atom, how fast would your nerve signal be? Really? If every step you took was the length of an atom? You with me? Okay? And so we have to have a way to speed up this signal. That's what these guys are. These little yellow guys right here are called myelin sheaths. So this up here, myelin, M-Y-E-L-I-N. Okay? And the purpose of myelin sheaths is to cover up parts of the axon. So instead of the nerve signal having to go pop, 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 slowly down the whole axon, it can skip and only hit the spots that are uncovered. So it allows the nerve signal to go very, very fast, because instead of just hitting every single spot, it skips down the axon. Okay? These gaps in between, I don't have it written in the notes, so I need you to add it. These gaps in between, number 4, they're called nodes of Ranvier. N-O, nodes of Ranvier. And it's French, so it looks like Ranvier. Nodes, N-O-D-E-S, of Ranvier. R-A-N-V-I-E-R. Spelling that out for my folks that are home, they're reading backwards. But nodes of Ranvier are the little tiny spots that are going to allow that signal to skip on down the axon. Okay? Number 6 here, number 7 is the myelin. Number 6 we talked about yesterday at the end of class is the Schwann cells. These are the little tiny cells that are on your nerves that are going to be producing myelin. So these are the Schwann cells. And it's spelled just like, well, it's already on your notes, but just like the truck that sells ice cream that comes around, the yellow truck. Everybody ever seen that before? The yellow truck that comes around the neighborhood selling ice cream and stuff, the Schwann man, the Schwann cells. But these guys make myelin sheaths and allow that nerve signal to happen. Okay? Then once you hit the end, you're going to hit the terminal point, number 5. I wouldn't really say that you had a synapse in this picture, because for a synapse, which is this right here, you have to have 2 different nerves. And the synapse is where one nerve ends, so you get the terminal point, and then you're going to be up against the dendrite of the next cell. And if you zoom into a synapse, you get this shape that you see sometimes in commercials for drugs. And I'll show you in a second what I mean. I might link it on the Facebook or the Canvas page. But you get this close little tiny gap that the nerve signal has to cross, where it goes from one cell to another. This is called the synapse, where you have the terminal point of one cell and the dendrite of the next cell. Questions on any labeling of this? Make sure everybody got all the numbers. So we'll just review real quick. If we go in order, number 1, dendrites. Let's go down the line so that James don't get them all. Number 2. That's just the whole cell body. It's technically called the soma, S-O-M-A, but I don't hardly ever use that term. I just say the cell body. Okay, Mackenzie? This whole piece. It's 4 letters. Say it loud. Make sure people can hear you at home. Axon. Okay? Emily, what about number 4 in the middle? It's already written. That's kind of cheating. So nodes of Ranvier, we can't let Emily get the cheat one. That's already up there. Nodes of Ranvier is number 4. 5, I said quick. Make sure you got it. So if there was another cell here, you could call 5 the synapse, because it would be the gap in between. But since there's not another cell here, these are just the terminal points. What does terminal mean? When someone has terminal cancer, what does that mean? Is that good or bad? It's bad, because terminal means you are at the end. Okay, anybody ever heard terminal velocity? You ever heard what? Come on, James, you've just been here. Terminal velocity. That's a good quiz bowl question. Terminal velocity is the speed that's at which, when you jump out of a plane, it's as fast as you can go going down, because you hit a certain speed that the air wind resistance is equal to the gravity, and so you can't go any faster. So it's your end velocity, it's your terminal velocity, as fast as you can go. Terminal points. Terminal points, the end point. Okay. All right. What is it? Schwann cell, yeah. Your Schwann cell, 7 is the myelin, and 8 is the nucleus. The only thing that's not a number up here that I expect you to know is the ribosomes, called missile bodies. Cool? All right, let's carry on.
Do you want us to call them missile bodies on the test?
I'll probably give you a word bank, just because this is a weird one. But yeah. Oh crap, I didn't mean to do that. Stop. Let's erase, don't screw things up. Let me show you a video real quick, what I need, and I'll link this video. But this is also always a video I like showing in this class. Really? What is studio? What's going on here? I'll be on regular YouTube. So when I was in high school, they changed the laws so that drug companies could start advertising. And I'll never forget, Claritin was one of the first ones. And it had this woman, and she was like, everything was clear because her allergies were gone and everything. But a lot of these companies got really creative with their ads. And one of the neatest little ads here is this Zoloft commercial. And if you've ever, anybody know, you might be able to tell what Zoloft is for just by looking at the little dude there. Yeah. And it's generic now, so you really hardly ever see any ads for it. But this ad is really cool because it actually shows you a little image of the mechanism of action of Zoloft. Because if you want to change something that nerves do, wrong one. If you want to change something that nerves do, whoa, did I delete the doggone whole image? Yeah, whew. Where do you think you'd attack? If I want to change how nerves act, where on this picture do you think you would put some chemicals? Go ahead. The nucleus is hard to get to. Why is the nucleus hard to get to? What we got? Yeah, the nucleus is hard to attack because it's protected. It's very, very well protected. So yeah, if you could change the nucleus, you could do lots of crazy things, but the nucleus is hard to change. So that's a good thought. Any others? The axon is something, once again, it's surrounded by the membrane. The problem with changing something at the axon is kind of, it's kind of weird to say, but it's kind of just a dummy part of the nerve cell. It either happens or it doesn't. You can't make the axon kind of sort of happen. Once a nerve cell signal starts, it's gonna go. It's hard to stop, and unless you get something here at the cell body, it's hard to start. If you want to put a chemical somewhere, you're gonna put it in open space. What's the only place I've talked about where things are gonna be happening in open space? The synapse, okay? Most of your medicines that are going to affect nerves are going to affect the synapse. They're going to control whether or not chemicals get released or get used up again. And so what a lot of your medicine does that affects, and illicit drugs as well, that affect nerves, what they're going to do is they're going to really attack your neurotransmitters, which are not what's going on in the nerve, but what's going on between the communication between this nerve and the next nerve. Okay, so one of the things they found out 30 years ago or so was that a lot of people with depression have low levels of serotonin. Serotonin is a brain neurotransmitter. It's a neurotransmitter that goes from one cell to another. And what they figured out was they could actually stop your cells from taking up serotonin again. And
Mr. Carr,
yes, ma'am.
I need Emily Bailey to the front to sign out.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, Emily, this is only a minute, so let's watch this video. And this is showing you that synapse, and it really kind of shows you how it works.
You may feel exhausted, hopeless, and anxious. Whatever you do, you feel lonely and don't enjoy the things you once loved. Things just don't feel like they used to.
You got a little depressed,
These are
yeah.
some symptoms of depression, a serious medical condition affecting over 20 million Americans. While the causes are known,
This is what we're talking about.
related to an imbalance
So,
of natural chemical.
We got a synapse here. Terminal endpoint of nerve A, and we have the dendrite of nerve B. Now, the little circles here aren't exactly perfect because what actually happens is the terminal endpoint is going to release the chemicals and then attach, start the new action potential, and then come back and get taken up again. And so what Zoloft actually does is it blocks the reuptake. So release the chemicals and they just keep sending signals. So Zoloft makes you feel happy because you still keep getting that happy neurotransmitter over and over
Goes
again.
between nerve cells in the brain. Prescription Zoloft works to correct this imbalance.
Kind of blocking that
You just
reuptake.
shouldn't have to feel this way anymore. Only your doctor can diagnose depression. Zoloft is not for everyone. People taking MAOIs or Pimozide shouldn't take Zoloft. Side effects may include dry mouth, insomnia, sexual side effects, diarrhea, nausea, and sleepiness. Zoloft is not habit forming. Talk to your doctor about Zoloft.
All right, so like I said, I like showing that just because it's a good way to understand. Have a great day, Emily. To understand, you know, what these guys are attacking. Now, here's the thing: can anybody guess of a chemical that instead of doing that in the brain with happy thoughts, it does it with nerves that are telling your muscles to move? So one of the most common neurotransmitters for our muscles is this neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. And there's one specific chemical that I'm thinking of that blocks acetylcholine reuptake. So instead of sending the signal and getting a movement, you send the signal and get a movement and a movement and a movement and a movement. And I can stay up on it and I can do anything. Woo! I feel great. Nobody?
Chemical?
Yeah. Caffeine does a little bit different. Good try. Beyond caffeine though. So much if I take too much, my heart might explode.
Creatine.
It starts with the right letter. Cocaine. Cocaine blocks acetylcholine transmission. There's a joke that in Friday, I believe, that you can't outrun a crackhead. That's some truth to that. Because what you're doing is you're blocking acetylcholine uptake, and this is why cocaine is absolutely illegal in sports. Because it just turns everything in your body that's a skeletal muscle up. Okay, so this is all about, you know, how these medicines work, and not all medicines work like that, but just something to think about. All right, let's do some neurophysiology real quick, and I've kind of already mentioned some of this stuff. You have to understand a little bit about electricity to understand what's going on here, okay? So voltage and current. Voltage is any time you have a difference between two charges, okay? If I wanted to shock James, we used to be able to do it at church all the time because church had the fluffiest carpet. The church had the fluffiest carpet, and I could just walk across the floor and just shuffle my feet. And by the time I got to the back of the church, I had really built up a charge in my body, and all I'd have to do is get that touch, get close to somebody, and really give them a nice big shot. And the reason that is because in shuffling my feet, I'm dumping electrons, and I'm changing the charge on my skin. And when I touch James, he hasn't changed the charge on his skin, And both of our bodies are saying, I want the charge to be back to normal. And so I'm going to get his electrons jump off of him onto me to try to get that charge back to normal. So anytime you have the charge difference from one place to another, you have what's called voltage. Current is when that charge moves. Current is when you get the movement, the flow of electrical charge, the movement of ions across cell membranes. Okay? Everybody knows what a 9-volt battery is, right? The square rectangle looking batteries. Okay? They have a voltage. It's 9 volts. Is it doing anything when it's not hooked up to anything? No, but it has a voltage because it has a difference in the plus and the minus. There's a difference in those charges. The voltage is ready to go. And to get the current, what do? You can lick it, because what are you doing when you lick it? Both things are connected across the saliva of your tongue. And how does it feel? It gives you a little tickle, doesn't it? Okay? You feel that 9 volts fly across your tongue because you're then allowing that difference in charge to flow from one side to the other. Every cell in your body has voltage. Every cell in your body has a resting membrane potential, and you're constantly keeping it up. Every cell in your body has to use energy even when you do nothing. This is why even when you do nothing, even if when you're lazy all day long and you lay in the bed or you lay on the couch and you watch TV and you barely even move, you still get hungry and thirsty, because your body still needs energy to maintain this resting membrane potential. Every one of your cells has to constantly put atoms where they don't want to go so that you maintain this charge of around -70 millivolts, which means your body's constantly pumping these ions across the membrane and maintaining this charge. This is also why, even though you're organic and you're not metal, if you grab the electric fence and I grab your hand, what's going to happen? It's gonna electrocute both of us. We're both gonna feel that electricity because our bodies are electrically charged. Now, if you die and I let you lay there for, a week or so, and I put your arm on the electric fence and then I hold your hand, it's not gonna transmit because your body's gonna lose its resting membrane potential. Now, if you have enough water, the water could still carry it, but for the most part, once you die, you lose that resting membrane potential because our body's constantly being produced in it with that ATP, okay? The reason we need that resting membrane potential is because you have to have a charge to be able to get a signal. If you're sitting at 0 with no membrane potential, with no voltage, you can't change it. But if I have a charge on every one of my cells, I can change the charge. And by changing the charge, I can signal the cell to do something. Nerve cells are really easy to understand this because their signal is pretty straightforward. It's called an action potential. An action potential is the flow of a nerve signal. And this is a pretty good picture that's kind of helping us out to show how this works. So sitting at normal, we're -70 millivolts inside the cell, which means we're more negative inside than outside. And so the first thing that happens is we're going to depolarize our membrane. Cells are going to shoot out sodium, bring in potassium. I don't want you to stress on the biochemistry of that. Just understand we throw ions back and forth to make the membrane negative. And this little area right here is your nerve signal. And as it becomes more negative, it depolarizes, then you have this feedback loop that's going to make it go right back to normal. Repolarization. It's going to repolarize it and bring it back to normal. Now, this bottom picture is what we were talking about of something that's happening very, very slowly. Every step along the axon you have to take. If this is what our nerve cell looks like, we would be paralyzed. because by the time you told your body to move, it would have taken so long to get there that you would already have kind of forgotten what movement you wanted to do. And so for our body to move effectively, you need these myelin sheaths. So instead of having the nerve signal go in every single micron down the axon, it can skip on down the way. And you have to have energy to do it. That's why when you sit on your hand or when you sleep wrong, what happens? It can leave prints, but let's say like if you slept wrong so that like you were resting on your wrist, what could happen? Yeah, and how does it feel? It feels tingly, but it also feels numb. Because what you've done is you cut off blood flow, which cuts off oxygen, which cuts off, we talked about it last week, making what? Making energy, making ATP. And if you don't make any energy, you can't maintain this negative 70 millivolts and you can't send the signal. So you say, move hand, and your hand does what? And so you got to get that blood flow back to it until you can start to move again. Interesting? Everybody with me? Okay. This is something here, whether you're at home, whether you're here, I strongly encourage you to check out some YouTube videos of it, because like they have a way to show you this stuff moving a little bit better than I do. I have some CDs that I show, but with so many people at home, it's just better to go and find a YouTube video of action potential. We'll probably watch them here together in class, but really kind of understand how this is moving. Later in the week, we're going to have, I think Friday, we're going to have a guest speaker come and talk to us. And she's going to talk about some pathology. And we're going to, I really want you to think back on the difference in these two images when we talk and how they work. And it'll kind of give you an idea of some of the mechanisms of that pathology when we get there. Okay? And if you're at home watching this video maybe later, Zoom on Friday, go ahead and mark your calendars. Let's say 1:45 or so, because I probably have a guest speaker then. It'd be cool if you were here to maybe ask some questions. All right. I think that might be a good stopping point, guys, because we can talk about the synapse later. Yeah, I think that might be a good stopping point. So if you're at home, thank you so much for watching. I don't know if anybody's with me. Nope, nobody's with me. But if you're watching the video later, thank you so much for watching. And sorry if it's backwards. If you know of a way to flip it around and make it straight, let me know, because we've tried on the science hall a lot and can't figure it out. So feel free to try to flip it around straight, and I will see you later.